On and something else coming up for sure, but it's dark because
Did you lose that with it?
down.
There's a huge thing down on Schneck.
Really?
Yes, you don't have internet, you don't have anything.
So I have internet because I have battery,
Okay, good.
but
Yeah, as that came up, you were completely,
I don't have this. So maybe people on Zoom could see the screen. Maybe we'll move the screen in a different way.
well, I can also attach to the Zoom on my iPad so we could see it at the table.
Okay, that's so cool. Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, there's a huge power lines that are down. Trees fell on the power line right on Schneck,
Wow.
like right,
Good morning,
right
Edie.
before you.
Good to see you.
Morning, sure,
Yeah.
tough.
Okay, so we're just getting started here, and we have a power outage over here.
Oh,
But I think I have battery. I'll let you know if I'm going to lose my battery. Um, okay. Let's see where we're holding. Sharing the screen. I know last time I had a hard time with this. So we have a power outage. That's what VA said as well.
I figured since he doesn't have the screen, good morning. That I would just join and we can see his screen from here. Let's see.
Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm just trying to figure out how to share my screen.
What power are you working on? Just battery?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right now we're just working on battery. Feel free to grab a bagel. I have hot water usually, but not today. Water, seltzer.
Sure.
Okay, how do I? Good morning, Anita.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Rabbi. I'm not camera ready. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I hear you. Is that Joanne?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, hi.
Hi, Anita.
I'm glad you're able to join us today.
Good. And you. I hope you're good too.
I don't know why. Okay, maybe you could help me for a minute with this. Maybe you would know how to do this. So I I put this on, and then I want to share my screen, but it's not letting me go to the Zoom. So I have to first.
That's interesting. Back to it. No, I think it's its full screen. For some reason, it doesn't like this, now can you get to the, wait, hold on. Back to Zoom. Here's your Zoom meeting. There you go.
Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know the Alt tab?
Alt, yeah.
Alt tab?
Oh, I didn't know that.
If you hold down the Alt key and you hit
Lets
tab,
you go
it'll
to-
cycle through the windows.
That's amazing.
So
That
if you're
that
doing
worked.
something, I don't know if you need to be at a full screen for that. You can try it either way, but yeah, you're just missing.
Okay, thank you. So here we go. We're going to share our screen, and we are going to get started this morning. We are on a beautiful Sunday morning, and we are
Press.
okay, just maybe turn off audio and yeah, the microphone. We are on a beautiful Sunday morning, and here we are talking about Modeh Ani. And if someone in the audience could tell me that they see my screen. Okay, perfect. Perfect. We are talking about the Modeh Ani prayer, and the question that was posed was, let's talk about why is this the first prayer when we wake up in the morning? So by the raise of hands, who here knows about the Modeh Ani? Have they heard of it before? Okay, so we have a few hands raised. And the Modeh Ani is the first prayer that we wake up. Now, in the picture that you see, so you see this person making this interesting pose for the Modeh Ani. Do you recognize that pose? By raise of hands, do people recognize that pose? That's a praying pose, right? But as Jewish people, you don't really see people doing that, right? So why is that person doing that in the picture? You could argue that it's just because AI decided to do that. But my argument would be that actually it's connected to the fact that in Modeh Ani is the one prayer a day that we actually do that. There are various customs in terms of, is this the first slide? How do I know if this is the first slide? No, this is the first slide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first slide. So let's talk about this before we get to that. So we start off with the Modeh Ani prayer. And one of the interesting things about Modeh Ani is that we don't get out of bed before we say Modeh Ani, right? And the question is, seemingly many prayers we're supposed to rise, and here traditionally we're sitting. Not only are we sitting, but we're sitting in bed. Like maybe you should get out of bed before you pray. Okay, so the answer is twofold. On the one hand, the answer is you got to say it the second you wake up. On the other hand, you're not allowed to jump out of bed the second you wake up because of health reasons. It's just not a good thing to do. It's not a stable thing to do. You're supposed to wake up and then let yourself catch yourself before you get out of bed. So being those two things, we wouldn't be able to say do the Modeh Ani out of bed right away, right? So therefore, the Modeh Ani is done in bed. Now, why does it have to be done immediately when you wake up, right? That's an obvious question. The answer is that the simple reason why we say Modeh Ani is because every single thing that we do, there's always a thankfulness to God, right? We say, have a glass of water, we thank God. We have a mitzvah, we thank God. There's something nice, a nice smell, we say a prayer and we thank God. We just had a nice sleep, so we're going to say thank you to God. Thank you for God for the sleep, and thank you to God for returning our soul. Now, it's interesting that number one, it's an interesting prayer. There's no God's name in it, right? God is not mentioned in the actual prayer. And in addition, it's said after the fact. With most prayers are said before the fact. So you make a blessing and then you drink the water. You make a blessing and then you do the mitzvah. There's a few things that we do after. One of them is washing our hands. We'll do the prayer afterwards. Mikvah, the prayer is done afterwards. And the Modeh Ani, the prayer is done afterwards. I don't know if there's many other examples. Now, in the first two cases, the reason why we do it afterwards has to do with impurity. So if we want to make a blessing, we'll do it in a more pure state. So we'll first finish washing our hands, we'll first dip in the mikvah, and then we'll do the blessing. In the case of sleeping, we obviously can't do the blessing before we wake up. We have to do it after we wake up. But being that it's connected to our sleep, we have to do it immediately. Because like anything, you can't make a blessing on water and walk away and then drink the water 10 minutes later. It has to be perfectly after the blessing. And in the case of washing your hands, the blessing has to be perfectly after washing your hands. Lighting candles is actually another example. Yes.
You say sitting up in bed. I mean, I'm laying down when I wake up. Can you say it laying down? Does it matter?
You could say it laying down. Yes, you could say it laying
Okay,
down.
like this.
Yes, you could say it laying down.
All right.
I'll get to exactly the details of how I do it, but yeah, you could say it laying down. I just mentioned candle lighting, because we had the candle lighting service on Friday, and over there we also did blessing afterwards, that's a very interesting conversation, because the reason why we do it afterwards is because the blessing is what brings in the Shabbos. And once Shabbos comes in, we don't light candles. So you have to light the candles and then we do the blessing, which makes the holiday very interesting, because on a holiday, we are allowed to light candles. So seemingly on a holiday, we would say the blessing first and then light the candles. But the rabbi said that we don't want to confuse anyone. So we just always do it in that way. First the candles and then the blessings, even on a holiday where technically you would be allowed to light the candles after the blessing. So that's an interesting tidbit. Okay, so regarding the actual structure of the Modeh Ani, like I mentioned before, you have this guy sitting up like this. Now that is a posture of thank you or a posture of prayer. Now, generally that posture is considered problematic. There are two postures that we do not do. We don't get on our knees and we don't pray like this because it's considered non-Jewish. It's considered Catholic. And because of that, even though in the Beit HaMikdash that was a normal thing, the Jewish people used to do it, but we refrained from doing it to stay away from idol worship and from, things that are not Jewish. I think so. I think so. Or at least there was a period of time before it was taken from us, before people copied us and then we weren't allowed to do it anymore. That it originated from us, I would think. Correct.
So that we were different than other people.
Correct. And it was considered like idol worship. So there is a number of things that we stay away from idol worship in the greatest way. And therefore, there's a number of things that we just don't do to not look like we're doing what idol worshipers do. There are, regarding kneeling, there's one time a year that we do kneel, which is on Yom Kippur. Even then, the law is that you're not allowed to kneel on a stone floor. Because on a stone floor, like if we're to be marble or to be granite, you were not allowed to kneel because a stone floor is stone, and stone is traditionally what was served as idol worship. So if someone is bowing down, they would have to make sure they're not bowing onto a stone floor, a stone floor. There are shuls that have stone floors, and they'll put down a carpet for Yom Kippur, or every person will have like a little handkerchief that they'll put by their head when they actually bow down to the ground, because we don't bow to stone. We do not bow to stone. Even if we don't mean to be praying to the stone, we still refrain from that. Good morning, Isaac. So actually this question about the Modeh Ani was Isaac's question. I got very excited because I actually love this topic, and we're just getting started here. So that is the general idea about not doing this. However, with the Modeh Ani, I don't know why I tried researching it. Maybe we'll see a little bit more as we continue studying today. But regarding doing this, that's the one time we do it during the Modeh Ani. So the truth is that there's various customs of exactly how to do it. Some people do this. I don't know if the camera is seeing what I'm doing, but some people do this on their heart. So generally the idea is we don't want to do this, even though we are doing this, but we still don't want to do it. So many people do this. Yes. Some people do. I grew up doing this as a young child. And then as I got older, I found out that the previous Rebbe taught to do this. So I don't know if you're basically doing this, but you're just meeting your thumbs. So it's almost like spread apart a little bit, but regular. So you're going like this, but the thumbs are a little bit spreading it apart. And that's what differentiates from a regular this. There's a letter of the Rebbe where someone asked, how could you do this when you're acting like the non-Jews? And the Rebbe responded by saying that traditionally in idol worship service, when they did this, they were also kneeling. And being that we're sitting in a bed and we're doing this, so that is also what differentiates us from idol worship. Okay, so that's just in terms of how it's done. Another reason why I sit up, besides the fact that I want to be doing this, is because I mentioned this in the past, that in Chabad custom, in the morning, we're supposed to wash our hands. Because when we wake up in the morning, we are impure, and that impurity goes onto our hands. in Chabad custom, we take that so seriously. In Jewish law, it's taken very seriously. You're not supposed to use the bathroom before you wash your hands. You're not supposed to touch any openings in your body before you wash your hands, your nose, your eyes, your mouth. It's considered a very serious impurity. In Chabad custom, we don't even get out of bed before we wash our hands. So we have a water basin right next to our bed, and we sit up, we'll say Modeh Ani, and then we'll wash our hands. Which takes me to why Modeh Ani doesn't have God's name in it, because we aren't pure. So how can we mention God's name?
You say Modeh Ani before you wash your hands?
Yes. Yes. So the first thing in the morning, thank you, God, for restoring my soul.
Okay.
And then we wash our hands. And then following washing our hands, there's a number of prayers. One of them is a lengthy Modeh Ani with God's name in it, and it talks about the 4 levels of the soul. It's like a whole lengthy prayer talking about restoring our soul, but we only get to that later when we're more pure and we're dressed and we're ready to talk to God. Here we're in bed, so we just do this one sentence, this quick one sentence without God's name. Modeh Ani lefanecha melech v'kayim. Thank you, God, the King of the universe, for restoring my soul. Okay. There is an interesting fact, which is that Modeh Ani is a relatively new prayer. In the time of the temple, Modeh Ani didn't exist. And the reason for that is because they were more pure. And therefore, from my understanding, is they didn't need to wash their hands in the morning in order to say God's name. And therefore, they only had what's called the Alekei Neshama prayer, the prayer that we say later with God's name. And that was their Modeh Ani prayer. Modeh Ani was instituted when we were considered less pure, and we weren't allowed to say that prayer anymore the moment we woke up. So they instituted this new prayer called Modeh Ani. Again, I will get to this later by bringing out the depth of what this prayer is all about, but that's also an interesting fact.
When did we become less pure? Yeah, like
think
when
it-
did we get so
Yeah.
different?
Yeah.
So I think it was generally when exile started, right? There's a number of things, both in Kabbalah and also in Jewish law. So first of all, in Kabbalah, we are considered less in tune with God. During the exile, God is less revealed. That's in terms of God, right? We don't see God in the Holy Temple. And also, in terms of ourselves, traditionally, we are less in tune. Our souls are lower souls. We're less in tune. That Kabbalistically. Halachically, there's a number of things that we are considered to have no control over, which apparently in the olden days they had no control. So these days, if I'm going to pray, I have to wash my hands, even though I know that I didn't touch any areas that were impure. So if I know that I picked my ears, any openings, if I touch the opening or if I touch the space that's usually covered, so if I touch my scalp, I have to wash my hands. I know for sure. But even if I didn't do any of that, I still have to wash my hands because unless I was vigilant not to, your hands are busy. Your hands are going places. You don't know what you did.
Yeah.
So you wash your hands. That sort of just all over the placeness, that sort of in control, that I would just be touching things without noticing, that's something that's considered a more modern thing, meaning sometime after the destruction is when we lost the ability to keep that control, which is another point connected to that is tefillin is an interesting conversation. Tefillin is something that back in the day, they used to wear the whole day. They wore it the whole day. It was like wearing tzitzis. You wore it or yarmulke. You wore it the whole day. Today, we only wear it during prayers. Not only that, but we wear it during a very, very limited time during prayers. Well, we won't even wear it during the whole prayer. It's a very specific time during the prayer that we'll wear it. Why? The answer is because the law is that tefillin is so holy that if your body is going to release any toxic thing, anything that's not pure, something which is not clean, you're not supposed to wear the tefillin, right? So if someone is wearing tefillin and they feel like they need to, release some gas, they take off the tefillin and then they'll put it back on afterwards. If someone is not feeling well and they know that they're not going to be able to, even for those 40 minutes, stay, good, they don't put on tefillin that day. That's how serious this is. There were generations that Jewish people men didn't put on tefillin, period, because they felt like they couldn't. And that's why they instituted this, that let's do it for a half hour and try to just like, try to figure it out, which is why women don't put on tefillin, meaning essentially most mitzvahs that women are not obligated to, they're allowed to do if they wish. Like sukkah. A woman is not obligated to sit in a sukkah. She's allowed to eat in a house during sukkahs. She doesn't have to eat in the sukkah, but she's welcome to eat in the sukkah and she can make the blessing on the sukkah, right? So it's like an optional mitzvah for her. So essentially, tefillin would go into that category. And there were women in the past that put on tefillin, holy, righteous women, because they wanted to have that mitzvah, even though they're not obligated in it. But in our generation, where we don't have control over our bodies, and our bodies could be, 1 minute to the next, more pure, less pure, even for the men who are obligated, we're like holding our breath. So that's why the women don't put on tefillin in this generation or in the past, a few hundred years. But that's that concept. Rashi's daughters put on tefillin. Yeah, so that's just another interesting point. One of the reasons why Chabad doesn't sleep in the sukkah is for the same reason, because we feel like the sukkah is a holy place, and we feel like during our sleep we can't control ourselves. So we're not going to sleep in the sukkah because we don't want to let out gas in the sukkah. The so in connection to that, I know people that were very special people, holy people, that when they slept with their hands over their head, or they slept in a position that they would. And even in Jewish law, there's specific positions that men are supposed to sleep in. But the point is that nowadays, to make a long story short, after that whole bit, unlike in the previous days, they were considered to be more conscious during their sleep. They were able to go to sleep and wake up and say, I didn't touch anything impure, and my body is still pure, and I didn't release anything, and I'm good. And they could say God's name. Nowadays, we are considered less pure, and we don't have control over ourselves, which is why we don't say God's name when we wake up, and we wash our hands first, and then we'll say God's name. Okay. How are we doing with the people on the Zoom? We're doing well? Okay, so in terms of going back to why we do the Modeh Ani, which is going to be most of our discussion today. So there are two reasons, simply put, why we say the Modeh Ani. One reason is to inspire us to get out of bed, to inspire us to jump out of bed. We wake up in the morning and it's sluggish, and I'm like, should I get out of bed? And we want that inspiration. I'm here with a purpose, with a mission, and I got to get out of bed. Someone believes in me. So saying the Modeh Ani prayer, saying God restored my soul. And I mentioned this recently. I did a podcast recently. I don't know if you saw it. My father posted it on the email with Arnie, and I mentioned how the Modeh Ani, I think, is the greatest validation that a person could possibly get. We always are looking for validation. And recognizing that if God gave me a soul this morning, that means that He believes in me today. He has a plan for me. He wants me to go ahead and do something with my life, despite what happened yesterday. No matter what happened yesterday, if He gave it back to me, that means that He believes in me today. It's not just by mistake that I woke up this morning. So that sort of validation is supposed to give us that energy, that boost to jump out of bed and start our day. That's reason number one. And then reason number two, as I mentioned before, is the concept of simply thanking God. Thank you for giving me back my soul. Thank you for the pleasure of sleep, i.e. the pleasure of giving me back my soul. We spoke about that in the sleeping class, but really the reason why we have that pleasure is because of that soul rejuvenation, right? Okay, so those are the two simple reasons. Now, with that, and I spoke about the immediate gratitude, why we don't even wait to wash our hands or anything like that. Okay. With that, I want to show you this video. This video I showed you in the past when we did the JLI course. And by the way, we're going to have another JLI course in the fall, I think when my father has his. So that's gonna bump into each other, but that's gonna be how happiness thinks. That's the title of the course. During the journey of the soul, so we played this video which spoke about the 4 levels of Torah learning. You remember that? The 4 levels of Torah learning. So I want to just go over that again, because what I want to do in this class is I want to talk about the 4 levels of Modeh Ani and what they're all about, and possibly how they connect. So let's watch. I could turn off my here. Hopefully you'll hear it from here.
The all-new Dick's House of Sport, a new destination for sport, right here in Jersey City.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashemayim, ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is remez, allusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first 2 words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1,116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah. We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation. Our third layer of understanding is drush, interpretive. Our sages extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, the word Bereshis can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning He created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes, from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the 4 layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
Can I connect to your Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Yeah, that might be a better.
Have you done that in the
connection.
past?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you'll see the name Franklin, and then this is gonna be the passcode right here. Okay, so we are back. I don't know if I'm seen. Am I seen? Anita, do you see me on the screen?
Yes, yes, Rabbi.
Okay, perfect. No, I didn't mean to do that. Oops, I didn't mean to do that either. Let's see if we could do this again. You said it's Control Alt Control Alt. What did you say it was?
Alt tab. Hold down the Alt and then hit tab.
No, not that. Alt tab. Oh, got it. Okay, so let's share our screen again, and we will continue. Okay, so we watched that video and we are going on. So the reason why did I talk about that? Why did I bring in the 4 levels? The reason is because I want to show you the 4 levels of Modeh Ani. But before I do that, I also want to talk about another aspect of these 4 levels. So let's just chew it over again. We had the simple meaning of the verse. Every verse has its own simple meaning. There's the hint, right? The remez, the hint, which is there. There's the drush, what we could derive from it, what we could learn out from it. And then there's the soul, the Kabbalah behind it. Okay, that's the 4 levels. In regards to the word Bereshis that we spoke about, so the simple meaning was the idea of creating the world, right? God created the world. Bereshis bara, God created the world. What was the remez? I don't remember. Do you remember the remez? What was the second thing that he spoke about?
The illusion, when numbers, a lot of numbers were part of that interpretation.
1160.
Oh, right, exactly. I'll let you take the sound off. Right. Remember, thank you for reminding me. Bereshis bara has the same numerical value of God, that God created the world on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Rosh Hashanah Niver, God created the world on Rosh Hashanah. So that would be the hint, which is found in the words Bereshis bara. Then there's what we derive out. What do we derive out? The fact that God is teaching us that He created the world before He gave the mitzvahs. Why is that written in the Torah? That's not part of the Bible. It's not part of like the story of the Jewish people. And the answer is it is part of the story of the Jewish people because God is saying, I created the land of Israel, which gives you the right to the land. And that's going to be important for the Jewish people. It is important for the Jewish people. So that is derived, that's the drush. We learn out from those verses. So it's not a hint in the words, it's learned from the storyline. And then there's the Kabbalah behind it, which is the word Bereshit, which means in the beginning, also spells out 2 words, Barashit, God created 6, referring to the 6 emotions. Because in Kabbalah, we learn that for God to create a world, He first had to create the concept of emotions, because emotions are about relating to another as another, and the world being another from God, He had to create an emotion to have a connection to the world, whatever that means. It's for the Kabbalah class. But that's that, which we'll talk a little bit about today. but that's definitely an interesting thing. So here we have the four interpretations of voracious. Now I want to talk about another four. Okay, there's the four levels of the soul. Okay, so I don't know if you remember that I've mentioned that there's three levels of the soul or five levels of the soul, but today I'm telling you there's four levels of the soul, and I'll explain myself in a few moments. So what are the four levels of soul? The lowest level is nefesh, which means action. Including in that is thought, speech, and action. Anything which takes our inside and brings it out, puts words to it, letters to it. Even our thoughts are the conscious part of stuff that are going on inside, right? So thought, speech, and action are considered words, tools with which we hold on to an emotion or an idea or whatever it might be. That is the nefesh part of us. That's the main part of us that connects to our body, the part of us that connects to outside of us, connects to physicality. Then there's the ruach. Ruach is our emotional side. Then there is neshama, which is our intellectual being. Then there is chaya. Chaya is our willpower, or the I, the presence, which runs deeper than intellect, emotion, or thought, speech, and action. Essentially, our willpower is what drives it all. So a person only does what they want to do. A person is where their will is. That's what the Baal Shem Tov said. So our willpower is the I. In Kabbalah, the willpower is not considered a power of the soul. It's considered the soul itself. Will, or the idea of I want something, is considered the languages, the soul is turning towards something. So unlike intellect or emotion, where the soul is it's conforming to a certain way of life. It's conforming to certain rules. A desire, the soul is not conforming to anything other than soul. I want ice cream. What does the want look like? It looks like soul. Right? There's no intellect behind it or emotion backdrop to it. Therefore, that aspect of the soul is not considered conscious, it's subconscious. If you ask someone, where is your desire? Where's your intellect? Where is your emotion? Where is your action? Where is your desire? It's everywhere and it's nowhere. My desire, my willpower, the I-ness of myself is in my toe as much as in my head. Perhaps even more in my toe than it is my head. That's for another conversation. But it's definitely equally everywhere because it's connected to the essential part of my being, of who I am, the fact that I am. And the reason for that is because it's too big to conform to a specific part of me. It's not coming in and being limited to my brain or to my heart. It kind of remains a soul aspect of me, and it's to a certain extent subconscious. So that would differentiate between the three and the one, which is why sometimes I say that there's three parts of the soul, and then chaya, life, right? And then there's the fourth part of the soul. Now, essentially, we know that there's a fifth part of the soul. That fifth part is identity, or in the words that I'm using here, I would differentiate between desire and life. So the fact that we breathe is not even something that is everywhere. It just is. So it's not something that we even experience. A desire we experience. So it's the greatest experience that we could have. It's the greatest, purest soul experience. But there's a part of us, which is yechida, it's called, the essence or the oneness of ourselves. And that yechida is the identity that I am, my existence, beyond any experience. Okay? Now, those four levels that I spoke about, action, emotion, intellect, and willpower, are connected to the four worlds, to the four elements of creation. There's 1.5 million of these fours. The entire world was created in four, created in 3/4. The reason why it has to be 3/4 is because in every single relationship, there's a giver and there's a receiver. And in receiving, there's 3 steps to receiving, which just for the sake of our conversation, those 3 steps would fall into intellect, emotion, and action. Good morning. No worries. Never too late to join. Sorry it's dark. No worries, not at all. I'm sorry it's dark outside. So we have those 4 levels of will, intellect, emotion, action. And those 3 levels of intellect, emotion, and action are going to be the 3 levels of receiving. And finally, the 4th level
They want to sit for because we have to share a screen. That's all.
So sorry about that. So again, we have 4 levels. Level number 1 is giving. Level number 2, 3, and 4 is receiving. And within receiving, there's 3 elements to receiving, which is why sometimes you'll say that the entire creation is 3 levels. Like for example, how many worlds did God create? So he created 3 and he created 4. How does that make sense? So there's one world which is called a godly world, but he didn't create it. It's called the world of emanation. It's not a world of creation. He emanated that world. That world is the giver of the rest of the 3 worlds. The next 3 worlds is the created world, the formed world, and then the action world. And those 3 worlds are connected to intellect, emotion, and action. If someone is more intellectual, their soul is more connected to that world. If someone's more emotional, their soul is more connected to the emotional world. If someone is more of an action-based person, that soul is very much connected to this world. Even within this world, even within the action world, there's the spiritual world of action, and there's the physical world of action, which is the world that we live in. But in terms of creation, there was those 4 elements, 4 and 3, right? We got that? So the same thing, 3 plus 1. So that same thing is in the soul, we have those 3 plus 1. And the same thing is going to be in Torah. Torah has 3 plus 1. So there's the simple meaning of the Torah for the action people. God says, I created a world. It means he created the world, right? And then you have the emotional people, which connect the Torah on a more of an emotional level, which would be the hints in the Torah, or the truth is that over here it gets complicated. Which one is emotional, which one is intellectual? But there's the hints of the Torah, which is Bereshis bara doesn't mean he created the world. It means he created it on Rosh Hashanah, and that's in the numerical value. So there's a depth there to the word, and that's going a higher level. So we're going from the world of action to the world of form, right? And that's where this aspect of the Torah exists. And then going up even higher, we're going to go to the world of creation or the intellectual world. As the Torah came down to that world, it didn't yet come to the lowest level where God simply created the world. That would be way too simple. Rather, the idea of Bereshis bara is God proclaiming his ownership of the world, and therefore how the world belongs to the Jewish people, how God gave Israel to the Jewish people, and therefore they have the right to the land. And then going even higher, where Torah, before Torah was given, so to speak. In other words, the essence of Torah, the emanation of Torah, the Torah as it's in its source, right? Over there, we're going to say Bereshis actually is made up of 2 words, Bereshis, and that's referring to the 6 attributes that God created the world with. So there, we're already talking about the Kabbalah, which exists behind the Torah. Kabbalah is considered the inner meaning of the Torah because all those 3 were all part of the outer Torah. And then Kabbalah becomes the inner. It's the 3 plus 1, the 4th level, the highest level that exists behind it, right? It becomes our sages teach us that the reason why our Torah starts with a Beis. A Beis is the 2nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. Seemingly, you just start with an Aleph. Not only that, but it should actually start with an Aleph. Why? I'm going a little bit off topic here, but the reason why I start with an Aleph is because the words Bereshis bara Elokim, in the beginning, God created. Did I say that right? Bereshis, in the beginning, bara was created, Elokim, God. It should have said Elokim, God, bara, created Bereshis in the beginning. So there was a man with the name of Talmai. Talmai was a evil king. a monarch. And Talmai wanted to make sure the Torah doesn't have anything that's not PC. So he hired Jewish translators, rabbis, scholars to translate the entire Torah into Greek, I believe. But he wanted to make sure no one was going to play around with him. So he got 70 rabbis and he locked them up in 70 different rooms and they all had to translate it separately. 70 translations. That was considered a terrible time for the Jewish people. Why? Because we were taking the Torah to a very distant low, where a person like Talmai is going to have access to it, and that was considered a devastating thing for the Jewish people for many reasons, not for this lecture. But at the time, there were a number of miracles that happened. One of those miracles was that, well, all the miracles were that all the 70 rabbis did change a number of things in the Torah in terms of its translation. They all did the exact same change. And that was an incredible miracle that happened, which saved the Jewish people. It would have been devastating. One of those differences is they were afraid to tell Talmai that it says, in the beginning, it was created God. Because Talmai would say, there's someone greater than God. Someone created God. The beginning created God. The beginning is the greatest being, right? So therefore they switched it. Elokim bara bereshis. God created in the beginning. But if you think about that, if it says Elokim bara bereshis, Aleph, Elokim becomes the first letter of the Torah. But because it says bereshis bara Elokim, our Beis becomes our first letter of the Torah. So why is it that the Beis is the first letter when Aleph should seemingly be the first letter? Well, for Talmai, it was the first letter. And the answer is because we know that when we study Torah, we're studying things that we relate to as simple people, very regular, normal ideas that we could talk about, that we could relate to. Why is this godly? The answer is because we know that there's a deeper level to this Torah. And God allowed us to access that deeper level through the simple meaning. When you read the Torah and you read a simple story about Jacob and Joseph and whatever it might be, you're connecting to God. How could I connect to God when I'm talking about, trees and plants and animals and homes and people like me and you? The answer is because God put himself there. Because there's a deeper level, the deeper layer that somehow God allowed us to access through the deeper meaning. And therefore, whenever we study Torah, we study it with recognizing that this is an overlay, that this is the second layer, this is the base of the Torah. This is not the Aleph. There is an Aleph, which is in Atzilus, which is in the highest world. That's the Kabbalah behind the Torah. But in the Torah that I have down here, it's only the base. Really, through that base, I'm accessing the Aleph. For Talmai, who the Torah didn't belong to him, he wasn't supposed to have access to the Torah. For him, the Torah wasn't holy. His Torah started with an Aleph because there was nothing more to it.
There's nowhere else to go.
There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing more that he's accessing. There's no deeper soul that he's going to access by reading the simple interpretation of the Torah. But for us, that base is really about getting to the Aleph. So that's why our Torah starts with a base. You have a question, Means? No. Okay. So that is just a little on the side. Going back to our conversation, just to sum what we said a lot of information here. We said that Torah has 4 levels: the simple, the hint, the derive, and the Kabbalah. And then those 4 levels are connected to the 4 levels of our soul: the action, the emotion, the intellectual, and the willpower. Okay, now let's talk about how that all translates into Modeh Ani. The simple idea of Modeh Ani, like we mentioned, is thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. I woke up this morning, thank you. What's the remez? What's the hint that is found in Modeh Ani? The answer is, the hint is that we believe in resurrection. And let me talk about this for a moment. So I spoke about this actually in the Journey of the Soul class, and mainly in the class about what happens to the soul when we go to sleep. And I should have spoken about this earlier in our class, but I've clarified it now. So we constantly are saying God gave us back our soul, right? But if you talk to a doctor and you ask him what happened when we go to sleep, He doesn't know anything about a soul leaving and coming and going, and God gave me back my soul. Sleep is just a part of life. In Judaism, I've mentioned this in the past, sleep is a 60th of death. When we go to sleep, we taste death. And when we wake up, we're tasting resurrection. We're tasting the idea of a soul coming back into a body. And that's the message of Modeh Ani. Modeh Ani is not just a proclamation of thank you, God, for giving me back my soul, but it's also thank you, God, for giving me something to believe in the resurrection. Because when I experience rejuvenation, when I experience renewal, I have a tidbit of what it means, a real renewal of this entire universe. A renewal where everyone from the dead is going to come back alive, where the death that I know of is not going to exist anymore. To experience life, a baby experiences life. We never experience life. When we experience life, the experience of life happens when we're born. We experience it and we just live. But no, every morning we get to experience a little bit of that concept of I experience life. I receive life. And that's what's hinted, that's what's found in the Modeh Ani. Okay, that's the remez in the Modeh Ani, another meditation for the Modeh Ani. We're going to revisit this soon, but that's the remez behind the Modeh Ani. Like a gift, exactly. Moving on, we have the drush, the derive. What do we derive out of the Modeh Ani? The answer is what we derive out of the Modeh Ani. Right, we're up to that part? Yes. What we derive out of the Modeh Ani is a very important lesson for life. So I don't know if you've realized from the previous example by Bereshis, but this derived thing is also very much connected to the halachic perspective of Judaism, right? So we'll derive things on how to live. And here we're deriving something from Modeh Ani. What do we derive? So the law is like this. If I borrowed money from you, I would give you a collateral if you wanted a collateral, right? So you make sure that your money comes back to you. Now, there's certain things we actually had it just in this week's Torah portion, this past week's Torah portion, that you're not allowed to take as a collateral. If something is my livelihood, I'm dependent on it to live, you're not allowed to take that as a collateral. Now, let's say it's a pair of PJs. That you could take as a collateral. But if I only have one pair of PJs, you have to return that to me every night. Okay? So there's a concept here in Torah, which is a wild concept, almost like the what's the word? The one that the lender is almost like enslaved to the borrower because you have to be on their terms to make sure that they're okay. And the question is, how could I be? Oh no, I'm gonna lose battery. Got onto my phone, but I'm gonna lose the slide.